One. There's Kevin. Excellent. And Sanderson, Scott. And if you pick up a little background noise, it's because I am in a hotel lobby, which is not where I expected to be right now, but uh, working various.
I don't know. It looks like that you're in the same place you were earlier.
Yeah, exactly. I carry these trees with me everywhere I go.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's it's nice. It's I like having that nice fuzzy, warm northwest feel with me every place I go. Okay. Let's give it a minute for folks to come on in, and I will find the right window here to share with everyone. Let's see. It's going to be. Okay, I'll give it one more minute here for folks to roll in. It's like the bus right now. It's before after, so we should go ahead and get going. It's a smaller group today, but I always like the fact that APAC calls tend to be a little bit more intimate. And uh, as a rule, we can often go faster on these calls for call it the regular business because it is a smaller group, and we can also sort of summarize often things that happen in what in the U.S. is the morning call. Um, and but one thing we know from prior experience, it also means we often have more time for call it the intimate discussions, direct discussions. We go deeper on some topics that are harder to do with large group. So anyway, let me before after let me go ahead and share my screen, and we're and welcome everyone to the APAC meeting of the Decentralized Trust Working Group. In our new regular Wednesday meeting slot. Now, I think everyone was here last week and or I mean 2 weeks ago when we had our kickoff calls, and we had not confirmed what our meeting slots are going to be. We said, hey, Wednesdays at the time of those kickoff calls is a good option, but we had to confirm that we could get it. We have since done that. That was one of our work items that I had, and so everyone knows that now. Oh, by the way, always at the outset share the antitrust policy notice, just so everyone knows we're operating with that. So again, I'll pop right down and just say the action item of locking in on this, and it's now not only on the trustworthy calendar, but I had an email from Kim Duffy at Diff, and she has added it to the Diff calendar, so it's on both of them now. And excellent. So our other agenda item or action item was to put the risk assessment of harms prevention task force on today's agenda, and that is the quick agenda review. What we covered this morning and what's on for us now is cover the proposal for the risk assessment of harms prevention task force, which Scott will talk to. We don't have Nikki because she's in the UK, and but we can summarize what she said. You can see the notes here from the session this morning. And that's the second item. I was going to say I will quickly cover the table of proposed deliverables for Sean. I can't remember. Were you on? I guess I can go up and look. Were you on this morning's call too? No. Okay, so good.
Well,
so
but Sankashan, he also co-wrote the harms paper. Maybe he can share his thoughts on the paper
that's a
in lieu
good
of
point.
Nikki not being here.
Very good point. Yes. Second chat, if you want to do that, that's great. Yeah, no, that'd be wonderful. All right. So we'll start out though. Is there anything again, no new members from last week. So we always want to give folks, if there's anyone who wants to share an announcement of something going on, you can see here on your screen. Which Trevor, actually, what I'll do is I'm in edit mode. I'm going to pop into the update button for a second, and then I will copy that back into edit mode here and put it in the chat. So all the links that I'm showing you are on that page. If you want to go and follow through on any of those, or of course, put in anything that you want to share. So what we covered this morning announcements was Mitch Travers said there's going to be chairing the blockchain governance working group, BGN, I believe is their name. Michael Herman recommended a book called Reshuffle that I've taken a moment to look at, and it is very highly recommended about how AI is going to reshuffle business. And then Riza Rasoon, I believe is his last name. He is the chair of the Hawaii open source AI project. Talked about a new working group called Loyal Agents. I know someone else is a part of that group. Meeting organized by Consumer Reports, and you can see the rest of the group in there. Kauai, Project Liberty, and GoiaNet. And he, I think, was going to give us a link, but we didn't end out with one yet. Anyway, he encouraged us to participate in that group. You have to be a member of one of these organizations to do that, but he said all of us are welcome to join Kauai at no cost, be part of that. And lastly, Scott, you can talk about this talk that you're doing. I'll even post. I'll copy this over to the chat.
So the state of Utah is taking kind of a leadership of the states in the United States. And if you came to the IAW in April, they came out in force. There was about 4 or 5 of them talking because the state of Utah passed a digital identity law. And that really drove in that they create a digital identity for citizens to use with doing business with the state of Utah. And it could be used in lieu of another identifier, especially for people that don't drive and don't have a Utah, MDL license. So they have started a project. They invited me down. Usually I don't get invited and taken care of. So they invited me down. And I'm speaking just for 10 minutes about open standards and open protocols. And so definitely mention the great work we're doing here at Trust Over IP. And, they're advocating for the use of the things that we're building here. So, I'm excited about that. Okay.
Beautiful. That is great stuff. A little bit of an echo there. Okay. Now, one second. Oh no, my screen's back here. I'm going to keep track of what I'm sharing. That's what I'm happy there. Okay. Is any other announcements anyone else wants to make of things going on in the space that you want to share? I'll always do a quick check, and if not, then I will go to. I said I already hit these action items, so straight into our agenda items. And first, I will briefly cover what I covered this morning in terms of a table of proposed deliverables to get us started out, and how that might decompose the task forces. And then we'll go turn it over to Scott to talk about his proposal for risk assessment and arms task force. And so the page I'm going to be showing you, this one now, I'm going to just copy into. This is our home page on the Trust OP Wiki, Confluence Wiki. And where I am on this page is right on the deliverables heading on this page. And I added this content yesterday to just a table. It's a standard thing for any working group. Oh, Scott, do you have your hand up or
Yeah, I
that from
did
earlier?
because I
Okay.
did because of what I wanted to do. Let me lower my hand. So while you're going over this, this is the
Yep.
scope of the risk assessment. So, especially as we get into the credentials. So make note of that as Drummond goes over that. That's all I wanted to say.
Got it. Yes, exactly. So, yeah, so this sort of sets up Scott to talk about. So in the deliverables list, what I was going to say was we have a standard, sort of set this best practices within Trust over IP is each working group maintains its homepage. I just put the link, on the Confluence wiki, and I'll pop at the top just so you see that, and it covers all these topics. And one of the things we encourage, actually, usually deliverables is above task forces. I can rearrange that on this page. Is for the working group to organize its work or self-organize its work in task forces that are then mapped to deliverables. So it's not necessarily one-to-one mapping, as you'll see here. But the idea is that you can be most efficient by saying, hey, we have these deliverables, and this, if you're interested in those deliverables or what's driving towards them, whether it's a spec or a recommendation or guide or white paper or whatever, that you join these task forces in order to drive that forward. And they decide on their own meeting schedule. They can be asynchronous, they can meet ad hoc, they can have regular meetings, whatever it is. So that's why I propose before we get down into, okay, what task forces we want to start activating, let's look at those deliverables. And again, a second best practice is you keep your deliverables in a table on your homepage. And as as things progress or you change or whatever, you can always know, you go to working group and see what deliverables it's working on in this table on the page. So what I did was prepare a first version of this table. I think I can get almost all of it on the screen here, not quite all of it, most of it. So, and I put them in the order of sort of, well, potential priority, and I think that's what we're going to reinforce on today's call. Scott's going to talk about this first one, the risk assessment matrix. This morning, Nikki talked to, and hopefully they talked to human harms prevention business requirements definition. This is Nikki's proposed name. And actually, I was going to upload this in my edit mode because what I wanted to do was make sure both of these are in the recommendation. That's it. It's either a recommendation or a spec or a white paper are three basic types of deliverables. Recommendations are also called guides. So those two are recommendations or guides because they're not technical specifications, but well, Scott's going to go deep into that. So we're proposing those, and you can see we're proposing both of those are deliverables of the risk assessment and harms prevention task force because there's a lot of relationship between those two deliverables. And we're proposing, as Scott will explain, to do that for first because that sets up a lot of the requirements. And but he'll talk more about those risk assessments and harms are against the work we're doing and the eventual output and the three proposed primary specifications that we're coming up with. And these can be packaged in different ways. So this is just a proposal to say, all right, we have these two foundational credentials, personhood and verifiable relationship credentials, VRCs, that we talked about on the last call that are documented on the wiki. The proposal is because ultimately we want these ZKP proofs to work against the combination of those credentials that we produce a single spec, just provisionally the ETG credentials spec that specifies the schemas for both specifies extensibility, specifies the ZKP proof architecture and templates for that, and covers other related things like bidder, didder requirements, UX requirements, and all those related consideration. That's one spec. What it doesn't cover is protocols, and that's the second spec. So the GDG credentials exchange protocols, and PHC issuance, DRC, a topic we're not going to have time for today, but we'll the Harvard Applied Social Media Lab folks are working on a really cool idea called the DRC notarization protocol. And so that would be covered there, obviously ZKP presentations, and then also how you get started, right? Whether it's a QR code or how the whole, what PLP calls out-of-band introduction protocols, which include mechanisms like QR codes for which we have to have a spec. Arguably, that could be a separate spec. It all comes down to when, our requirements when we get there. So we got credentials and exchange, and notice they're in separate specifications, sort of a pattern followed with a number of other verifiable credential related specs. But the third one, we actually propose a single spec that covers both schema and protocol, because our cards are different. They're not verifiable credentials. They are shared data objects, which can be shared, in the context of these relationships that are set up with the other credentials. And so it should be a simpler, tighter set of topics to cover in a single spec. And that's why we're proposing just one spec for that, and a task force devoted to that. So you can see we're proposing credentials task force covers these two, and a separate task force, our cards, covers this one. And then the last thing you'll see on this list is is basically a recommendation. It's best practices or implementation guide around what is being called the sovereign wallet, which basically handles the key management and wallet requirements behind all of this, the whole set, which is why we're proposing that once we have those specs and we have the risk assessment, all that stuff, then we produce this implementation guide for any project that wants to make a compatible wallet, a sovereign wallet. And I'm done. That's my overview. So I'll stop for a second and say, what are the thoughts? Sankashan, go ahead.
Looking at this list, Drummond, I was thinking if it was a good idea to have some indicative timelines as a column against each of these items. Might help those who are interested in contributing figure out if they have the capacity and the timeline in front of them to be able to participate reasonably.
It's a very good point. Very good point. Okay. No, I'm just going to put in. And by the way, what I'm doing, just so everyone knows this, we have other working groups that have the dual calls, North America, Europe, and then APAC. And what we found is we used to have separate notes for each, and it's too complicated. There are too many things where you're just basically, it's much easier to integrate them. So we say that at the top of that. So what I typically do when keeping notes, and anyone else who wants to do it, because you can have multiple editors, we just note, because the North America Europe calls first, we just put in the notes for that. And then anything that we add or conversations we have under the APAC call, we just mark as, hey, these happen in the APAC call. And then everything else is assumed to be in the other call. So that said, I'm going to say, Sankashan made excellent suggestion. Wait a minute, I've got this wrong. Sorry, this is in this. The wrong area here. 1 second. Just want to capture this up here under this. I don't want this. That. And suggested timelines. No, it's good enough. I will actually. The other just again, if you're new to this, is anytime there's an action item, I just put action in front of it. Always has some assignment, even if it's everyone. And I'm not going to do it in real time, but I will take that action item. And once we're done with both meetings, usually like right away or the next day, I'll compile the action items at the end, which makes it easy to go back and check on that. So that's cool. Any other thoughts or feedback on this initial proposal around deliverables? Not that they're, the last thing I'll say is these very often, when you then dive down into the work, both requirements work, we could easily get through this first stuff and then decide we want to refactor these. And then, of course, once you get into these specs, they evolve. But this just sort of gives us a big picture and will make it easy for us to. And again, this suggests that the three task forces we would need in the order that we would need them is risk assessment, harsh prevention. And Scott's going to talk to credentials, which I actually got a note after this morning's meeting of at least the first person, Jeff Turk, who said, yeah, let's go ahead and form this task force so it can start, down its working path in parallel with the risk assessment work, because there's sort of some groundwork that needs to be done regardless of how that comes out in preparing for those specs. So I think that would form. I don't know if we need to form our cards yet or not. I was having a separate conversation about that just before this meeting, but we'll figure that out. All right, Scott, I'm going to, unless there's any other questions or feedback about that, of course, you can always put anything you want into the chat. I would turn it over to you.
Just leave that up right now for a second, because I
Sure.
want to go over and just make sure everybody sees all of the elements that you've identified here. Okay, so when you're thinking about a risk assessment for this project, you have to apply risk. I mean, risk happens in all forms of life, so we have to kind of narrow it down to a scope, and that scope is the ecosystem of decentralized trust graph, and so that's what this is. That's the scope. And so now I'm going to go into setting this table for a risk assessment and the tools that we have available to use to guide us through it, hopefully expeditiously. So I'm going to share my screen now. If you can stop sharing. I'm going to share and walk you through this document. Hold on, let me make sure I can put it on the chat. Okay. And that is the risk assessment that you can download from the Trust Over IP site, deliverables tab, and go to governance stack working group. And you'll find there's a couple of things for risk assessments. All right. So, and I'm pleased to have Sankoshan here. He is a contributor to this. So if I get off on the side, I know Sankoshan will keep me honest, So I want to if you want to participate in a meaningful way in a risk assessment in this working group, then I suggest you read this document. And, it's basically the cookbook of how to do it. And so let's go through it quickly. And yeah, so the basis, what I wanted to be able to do for Trust Over IP is because I found that a lot of people, you're either a risk assessment professional and know, the depths of these things, but that's not the group that typically is going to be doing these risk assessments. They're going to be content savvy individuals that need to have their heads twisted in a way to think about risk and assessing risk and then turning their heads back and focusing on how to mitigate it. So in essence, this is a quick and dirty way that follows best practices of both ISO 27005, which is part of the most popular family of standards ISO has ever produced, and NIST. Okay, United States government, driving risk assessments for government mostly. Okay, So in this document, you'll see there's a lot of terms that we use in risk assessments. It's helpful that you understand these terms because it has some kind of, it has a language, okay? And so basically, the nuts and bolts of a risk assessment is you establish the scope and context, you identify risks or things that could happen, you analyze them based on a couple of attributes, which I'll describe, and then you determine, okay, how are you going to deal with the risks that may affect your ecosystem, and then look at and create some pockets for requirements to be filled in to mitigate risk for those that's the direction you want to take it. And then, later, after we've identified all of the requirements in our working group, we can come back and see, did these requirements address the risks that we cared about? And if they didn't, and there's a gap, that would be considered residual risk. And then we'd figure out, okay, well, how are we going to deal with that? So that's the process in a nutshell. The best thing to do is, I think the quick and dirty version is probably better. Let me go and put into the screen. I'm doing it by screen. And you can see this is a pre-populated.
Bob, are you sharing the screen at all? Because I can't see it.
Yeah, we're not seeing anything, Scott.
You weren't, okay, at all. All right. Well, it was fine because I was really just going over the process, but now
Okay,
I'm showing you the worksheet. I think it's
Yes,
important that you see it, and then we could talk about how we do it using the worksheet. Okay, does everybody see that?
Yeah, now we can see this.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, that's fine. So this is basically what's downloadable from the Trust Over IP site. And we use Excel or Google Sheets. And basically we identified, and here's the place for all the risks. And we've categorized them in different groups, like governance authority risk, issuer risk, verifier risk, credit holder risk. We got the diamond. And then you've got, service provider, wallet providers, privacy risks. And obviously we want to add threats and harms to this. So we will just add that as categories that don't fit into any of these. Now, they have different layers on the trust over IP stack. We could determine whether we want to include that. I'd say yes, since we're a trust over IP task force. And then these are kind of information technology control areas. We added that. And here's where you populate the two factors that you want to analyze on every risk, which is the likelihood it's going to happen, from a qualitative standpoint, and right here on the likelihood, it's highly unlikely, unlikely, possible, likely, highly likely. Best practices say you have some kind of ranking system, and you can skew it if you like. And I skewed it more towards the higher risk. I'd rather be conservative and bump things up a little bit. That I think is it works as a best practice. And then the severity says, if that risk were to happen, then what impact would it have on, money or resources, things going down, not available, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of different outcomes from risk, from bad actors taking risky things. And so that's also a way to categorize. And basically this spreadsheet automatically, if you've put in these two values, it comes up with a risk impact, which will drive this kind of chart, which says basically, the way you categorize both likelihood and impact will give you this kind of skew. And then it's important to say, okay, how many, we could have 100 risks, and each takes time and energy to document, do we want 100 risks or do we want to have some kind of draw in the sand and say, we'll live, maybe we'll accept risk beyond medium, less than medium. Things like, that's an approach. But that's what the task force is going to drive. We're going to answer, we're going to review these. Are these relevant to our ecosystem? Check them. Whoa, maybe we'll change it, or we can add new ones. Okay, but this is just a starter set based on typical risks that occur within a decentralized digital identity and credentials ecosystem. Okay, and so the object is really to finish this, at least before we go to specifications, because this will drive these risk consideration actions will say, we need specifications here, right? And so that'll drive some of the work that's happening in other task forces. And then we can look at, okay, which ones are we going to mitigate, or which ones are we going to accept, and which ones maybe there's other avenues that we can reduce risk, like transferring and other things, and we'll get into that. Okay, that's it. All right, any questions about that? Basically, hopefully I've held your attention to the degree that you're interested to participate. And if you make that move, I highly suggest that you read this document, read both documents, and be prepared and come with your own ideas regarding, what it is. Okay, because I believe everybody can participate fully once they understand what the game is. So you got to twist your head and say, what could happen in lieu of any mitigation to it? Okay, any specification, any conformance plan, anything. It's just happening, and we're letting it happen. That's a risk. And then we look at treatment plans to mitigate it, not eliminate it, but reduce it. I have to stop.
Well, actually, you don't have to stop, Scott, but it's probably a good
I
idea.
do, but I feel like I'm
just-
running on and on and on. And my sense is, well, at least I'm enthusiastic about it. Risk is something that if you're not enthusiastic about it, you're not really, it doesn't hit you. But I love this stuff because I believe this drives the whole process. This answers the question, why? Why are we doing this? Why are we
Oh
doing
yeah,
it?
no.
We're doing it to mitigate risk. Right?
The fascinating thing is, you're seeing Russ, big thumbs up. Obviously, for me, I was co-chair of the governance stack working group when we did this work and creating these guides with Scott. And he just totally tutored me, and been my mentor and everything around this, which is, and actually, even after this morning's call, for reasons unrelated to the call, I had a long discussion about risk related to, what we're specifically aiming to do with a decentralized trust graph in the first person project. And I would actually make this comment, Scott, that we have to deal here in what we're doing in this working group with a special category or categories of risks, because as Sankarshan can talk more to this when we talk about the harms reduction, we are fundamentally architecting a socio-technical system. And with socio-technical systems, you have a lot more potential for risks and harms for people, right?
Right.
It's not just, you're not just dealing with technical risks around, some, a blockchain or an invoicing system or, whatever. So it's, I'm just underscoring, it's even more important because you have to think more, I don't know, it's much more 3D chess.
Well, I wanted to say one thing before I do want to hand it off to Sankarshan and talk about threats and harms and his comments around the process. But I'll give you a cheat sheet here. 3 of the biggest risks in this ecosystem is control of the private key, Okay, always in any cryptographic system, control of the private key is paramount. Okay, and so that'll be a risk, because now we're giving the control of the private key to people that are not used to controlling private keys, and that's a risk, obviously. Second is we're dealing with verifiable relationships, so we're dealing with identity. The other one is really, I'm a person, that's separate. There could be risk that you're not a person and you're portraying yourself to be a person. That's a risk. And we're gonna talk about that. I'm sure I didn't have it in there, but now with AI and agents, that's absolutely a risk. And so the third is in cryptography, I can assert a lie. Okay, and it takes governance and requirements to ferret out the claims that we make. So we have cryptographic binding if I control the private key, and I do proofing, which is another problem because we have proofing risk is a major problem that has to be mitigated, and it has to be done consistently. And the problem with proofing on a lot of cases right now, it's still manually intensive. So that's prone to failure. But we
Well,
are
Scott,
advancing things a little bit better.
when you say proofing risk, you get to me, you have to qualify that word. What are you talking about when you say proofing risk?
Yeah, so proofing risk and identity. So there's different
Identity proofing
standards
risk.
within NIST around IAL. So proofing means I am presenting evidence to prove that I am the identity that's named in the credential that's representing me.
Got it. Yeah, without that identity in front of it, the reason is with zero knowledge proofs. If you talk to someone like Hart Montgomery, everything's a proof. So I didn't know which proofing risk you were talking about. Yes, identity proofing risk.
No, and there could be other
absolutely.
proof risks with that too. So
yeah, although that it's important to categorize because he would say that different ZKP algorithms, for instance, and the proofs they produce have different call it levels of assurance associated with those things. So that's a quote, but we should make sure that's a ZKP proof algorithm risk, not identity proof risk. Okay.
Right. Good. Absolutely. Yep. So anyway, I remember this because this came a long time ago, but Sankarshan, we're putting you on the spot because Nikki's not here, but and just to set it up, I'm administering the CHPA conformance program. I don't know if you know about the CHPA, but we could look it up. It's becoming something. And the thing is, threats and harms are a very key task force within CHPA. And they've been really working with me as we've been developing and have developed the framework, the governance framework and the conformance program. So I'm glad to see that we have threats and harms in that view because it's something I'm very familiar with. And also, it works very well with the risk assessment. So that's my setup. So Sankarshan, do you remember? And there was this I have the document.
Yeah, I think I would like to say
human
that
harms challenge.
Yeah, the document was written probably 3-ish years ago, 2022, early or mid 2022, I think. And at that point in time, the document kind of was and the creation and the discussion leading to the document was in a parallel track with the risk framework that Scott just walked us through. So they kind of dovetailed very nicely. But one of the key things that I think we need to be mindful about now is that back in 2022, one of the significant points of discussion around risks using digital identity and identifiers was related to coercion, and that is a topic that that kind of I think was fairly commonly discussed, primarily because some of the large digital identity deployments had this as a yes, Raman, that is correct, and had this as a concern being raised by activists and civil society. If we traverse that path from 2022 to now, I think there is there are significant new aspects and dimensions that will have to be invoked to be able to think about harms in this space. And especially because, I know Scott has mentioned this in various calls and meetings repeatedly, that AI is all pretty fine and cool, but at the end of the day, you are trying to use cryptography to try and establish stuff, and you are not going to be able to do it correctly unless you take enough precautions to be mitigate stuff. You're likely never going to remove the chance of impersonation and other things that emerge. So this is the, I would say, the bounds in which the harms conversation has been going on. The challenge has been twofold, really. One is finding a framework that is easily adopted and understood by those who are designing these systems. The paper that is there on the Trust over IP site uses a framework called the PESTEL framework. Uh, since then, there have been newer approaches that have come out. I think very recently, Nikki had led the effort at Checked to produce two papers related to this topic. I don't have the links handy, but if I do, I'll post it to our Discord channel. So basically, one of the challenges that we have seen so far, and this is why the conversation in this working group is very promising, is that risks and harms have mostly been bolt-on conversations after the design has been done. So which is where you kind of end up in a place that you're trying to make compromises, the best compromise or the best possible compromise to meet any product timelines or design timelines. Starting it up front is a bit of an advantage. But ensuring that it is easily understood and can be easily adopted in a standard-based manner is far more important at this point in time. Primarily because with the growing ecosystem of agentic AI implementations, as well as the entire range of use cases that are being discussed across all these various working group task forces and other forums, I don't think there's a significant amount of understanding of, okay, if we are discussing this use case, let's overlay this use case in using this particular risk framework and see how this use case ranks up and whether this use case can actually be improved. I'm going to stop there. One of the reasons is I was merely a contributor to this document. Nikki has been doing this for years and years before me, and I don't want to try and sound off as any sort of expert in this domain.
Well, you did a great job. A lot much better than I could even think of. I did share to everyone. This was a diagram in the document that Nikki spent a little time with. Sankarshan, I can't talk through this. Do you remember, basically the background in this particular diagram here?
Offhand, in detail, no. This is actually I do know the backstory of this diagram because it came about from attempting to distill what Nikki had assimilated in terms of a body of knowledge across all these years she's been working on this domain and trying to make it more easily communicated to the audience. And which is why you see this concentric circles and emerging domains kind of visualization to it, primarily because it is easier to think of harms in context of an individual and also in terms of how the individual goes through various interactions across between relationships between individual relationships within domains, business domains, or trust ecosystems. I think at that point in time, we were calling it digital ecosystems. And then effectively, the harms that emerge when you are trying to evaluate them, where you are not in the direct path of the harm, but you are an unintended casualty, if we can say about it, of technology harms emerging, socio-technology harm, actually. And pretty much that's what I remember about this. There is some amount of detail in the document in this particular section that is there, the common features of harm.
So I think, Drummond, that was the conclusion of our combined segment here.
Yeah, excellent. I just coming off of mute. It's reminding me looking at that diagram that the same way, the same endorsement Scott gave to anyone interested in this task force to read the risk assessment companion guide, which really is like a mini course in the whole, shall I say, science and art of risk assessment. Similarly, the harms document that Scott put in the links, and I'm pretty sure that's already in the notes. I'm going to double check right now.
It's in the
I
chat.
strongly, that's what I mean. It's in the chat. I strongly recommend. I mean, frankly, whether you're interested or not, I recommend any member of this working group should read that, even if you're not interested in participating in this particular task force, because it's just really, really relevant information to thinking through what needs to what we're going to need to do and what we're going to need to be thinking about in our work here. It's great stuff. I remember when the deliverable came out and reading it for the first time, because I was not at that time able to be involved in that task force. I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic stuff. So I'm actually had this note for myself to say, highly recommended. I'm going to go as far. I'm going to make an action item. I'm going to put it group participants read this document. Yeah. Okay. Good. I'm just getting in the notes there. So, thank you, Scott and Secretary Shan both. Those are great summaries of why basically the proposal to start out with this task force and aiming at these two deliverables. And Kevin has his hands up, I know, to just massively agree with that. No, go ahead, Kevin.
Real quick, risk assessment is something I did in my work at process industries, and so I'm very familiar with it. And when I saw the harms, the concentric circles, I thought, I wonder if layers of protection can be employed here. That's what we do in process industry to keep the process safe. And I definitely want to join this task force. When will it be on the calendar?
So that's one of the things that we needed to talk about. So we decided to take some time at the next meeting to have the first discussion, which is really, let's understand the scope and the risks coming out of the scope. So I can hold it for 2 sessions. But it won't be it's not going to be in 2 weeks. It's going to be, well, it could be next week. Yeah, we'll do it next week.
No, that's what we discussed this morning. I was gonna circle back to that Scott made the proposal when we finished this morning's call to say, since we don't know yet about setting up separate dedicated calls for it, but we have a consensus to get started, let's use next week's meeting to do that and basically say, okay, consider it like the first meeting of that task force. For anyone who might not be, well, I'm not sure it'll be just educational. And for everyone who's going to be part of the task force, consider it a first meeting. Part of what can get discussed there is, all right, do we want, what kind of separate meeting schedule does it want to have, or does it want a regular portion of the weekly meeting? One of the reasons to do it next week is the following week is Internet Identity Workshop. And a bunch of us are going to be there, and therefore my rule is no meetings during that week. So I think I've already asked for these meetings. Our regular weekly meeting will skip that week. So next week we will make it. I mean, Scott, you asked for part of it. I'm just, other than our sort of standard announcements, I think it should be the whole meeting. Yeah, we'll just let's dive into it, since I think we do have consensus that this is a good starting point. Actually, I was going to say we'll do one other short agenda item I'll put first, which is again, Jeff Turk said, hey, folks who know they want to be part of the credentials task force, let's put up our hands that he's going to volunteer to start self-organizing that. But we don't need to talk about that more than just say, okay, we're gonna get that task force going, and maybe they'll have the week after IW, we might devote part of that meeting to getting that task force started. But next week, let's make it the main topic, and because we have the calm before the storm of IW, which is now the entire solid week. VRM day on Monday, 3 days of IW, and now Agentic Internet Workshop on Friday. I'm going to be a complete and utter basket case. So just know that later in the week you talk to me, the more my head's going to be mush. And Scott, brilliant man that he is using that week to migrate down to do a snowbird thing down in Arizona. Yeah. So his brain will be mush in the spring. All right.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Oh, verify. Oh, Sankershan, you put another link in here. Do you want to say something about this? This what you just put in the chat? Because I can also copy that.
I already mentioned this. I didn't have the links handy, so I pulled those up.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to add that to the. I just want to make sure I get this captured before we up here. Okay. All right, good. I got that. I'm saving that page so I don't lose it. All right, excellent. Is there? We just have a few minutes left anyway. Is there anything else anyone wants to bring up? Russ, you're the only person that we haven't heard from on this, and except for several huge thumbs up. Anything you want to share with the group?
Yeah, sure. I'm just trying to learn and listen. Drummond, I woke up in Edinburgh this morning, and I'm now in Minneapolis. So for me, it's 3 a.m. So if I sound drunk,
you just got back from your trip.
Yeah. So if I sound drunk, it's not the scotch. It's just a lot of time under my.
Sure, Ross. It's not the scotch.
It's true. It's true. I'm
have
actually
enough
done
of that
with
scotch. It
scotch.
sticks with you.
It's amazing. I will talk about that. It was a lot of fun. I did want to mention in the airport I picked up. Oh gosh, sorry about the blur.
Oh, Tim Berners.
Yeah.
You have
Thank
to
you.
put it in front
Recognize
of your
the picture
face.
in my face.
Unfinished
Did that help?
World Wide Web. There you go. That's it. That's exactly right. That's perfect.
And
Okay.
on page. Oh gosh, what was it? I was looking for your name, Drummond. I was, but we at least have your associate Doc Searles on page 340, and it talks about the intention economy and the power of actually the sinister power of the attention economy and how it sucked everyone into all the things that we know about, and that ideally the intention economy help us put forward the life and the needs that we want. And it's extremely obvious to me, and this is why I've been really kind of clawing after everyone since Geneva, that the first person project, in my view, is the foundation for a new intention economy, in my mind, right? And I want to talk to you on Monday, Drummond, about moving beyond intention to aspiration. That aspirational identity is something that I think is really, really incredible, in the sense of like who you want to become is almost more important than who you technically are or were. Just my philosophical, not delirious, but close to state here. So I don't know, that's just my 3 cents. I'm looking forward to keep talking with the group. I really appreciate this new home, and I'm here to help. So
that's fantastic. And I just see that we did agree at a time on Monday. So that's excellent. Look forward to that. And however many bottles of scotch you want to send over to me because you're tired of them, you just go ahead.
Well, I'll be in San Jose for IIW2 as well. So I'll maybe stick something in my pocket.
Oh, please do that. You say that, and yet there's an unnamed person who has twice done exactly that. Brought a whole, and
Bravo.
we finished off an entire bottle of single malt in the after party, not the main event. So you're welcome
Amazing.
to do that.
Bravo. Maybe even the main event if I get nervous. We'll see.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. All right, gentlemen, thank you all very much. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Scott and Secretary, for your presentation,
Peace
sharing
out.
your wisdom here. I'm really, as you know, excited to get this going. So enjoy, and we will see everyone next week and dive deep into risk assessment. And look forward to it. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Bravo. Thank you,
You
gentlemen.
bet. Talk soon.